Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Bonjour et bienvenue or welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon, and we're going to call this New Music Monday as I have Dylan Villain, frontman for the band The Wild out of Canada. And for Canadians, you know, most of us in the rock world have heard this. They tour incessantly, and I mean that in a good way, of course. They opened up for Airborne. They opened up for all kinds of great bands. And so they are an active part of the rock scene. They have a new album out called Still Believe in Rock and Roll. And I think most of you listening to me is, you share that belief. I think you listen to Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon because you still have a belief in rock and roll. So do yourself a favor. Check out Canadian band The Wild and Still Believe in Rock and Roll. It is available now on every single platform and in physical product. So you need to pick up a CD. I love my CDs. Anyway, Dylan Villain sat down with me a couple of weeks ago. We had this nice long chat. I will get right to it. And, there you go. Here is, without further ado, le seul et unique, the one and only, Dylan Villain. By the way, sorry for interrupting, but don't you think the middle name should be the? Let's try that again. Here is, from The Wild, the one, the only, Dylan, the Villain. There you go. Cheers. We are speaking with The Wild frontman, Dylan Villain, the new album, which is out now. It is wonderful. It is called Still Believe in Rock and Roll. And in these days of COVID-19, that's something very important to believe in, I think, right? Bonjour, Dylan. How are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing well. How are you doing today? It's each day is something new, isn't it?
New challenge. You cannot believe how difficult just grocery shopping has become. And yet you look around in Sweden and they're hanging out on ski slopes, having drinks at bars, and you're like, I don't know. I don't get it. But, you know.
Yeah. You know, and every day you wake up, you either look at the news or the latest regulations and policies and go about your day as you can, or you don't because you don't feel like getting bummed out and you just try to make the best of it. I mean, that's really what I've been doing.
Yeah. Or the other option is to go to my Twitter, @MitchLafon, and check out all the good rock news of the day. See, look at that.
Yeah.
Gratuitous plug.
You and I were talking about you and I were talking about that, like, what was that, a couple of weeks ago? And you were like saying, like, you know, what do you think? Like, is it worth keeping the content rolling? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Because I think, you know, rock fans like myself and yourself and a lot of other people, you know, that listen to the show and go to your Twitter and stuff, they want to have a break in the content of all the constant, you know, doom and gloom, or that social media is right now with this thing going on. So hats off to you for keeping all that rolling for us, Mitch.
Well, thank you. And you know what? I think that's what people do want, because I've been getting a lot of direct messages and stuff of saying, hey, thank you for breaking up the feed and not always, like you say, doom and gloom. And by the way, that also applies to all the bands out there, the Def Leppards, the Wilds, the Kisses. You know, everybody's putting stuff that's away from this big everybody's gonna die thing. So I think that's sort of helping as well. But let us get into the album. The Still Believe in Rock and Roll. So here you are. The album comes out in March. You want to head out on the road. You want to go promote it properly. You were supposed to go out with Airborne and do all kinds of dates, and you had pre-orders and all kinds of stuff. It all comes to a halt. How much of an impact does that have on the record's release and its ability to find a launch?
Yeah, you know, man, it's in short, I'll just say it's a hell of a time to release a record, but of course none of us could ever see this coming. And you know, as you mentioned, we had a full-scale album release tour in Europe, 17 shows. You know, 15 of those shows were already sold out before getting on the plane. Record coming out the day of the first show. You know, everything was looking great. And then, you know, a run, like you just said, followed right after that with Airborne in Canada. And everything stops. And I'll admit, like, it's really frustrating and it can be really challenging in a time where you've got so much momentum rolling up and leading up to the tour and the album release and everything like that. But you know what, I basically have had to just kind of turn my brain away from all that, because if I just stay on it, I just get so pissed off thinking about it. But really, the thing that's pulled me out of it, and I don't know, I think a lot of the people that I've been talking to kind of feel the same way, is understanding that the situation is not only just my own personal shit or my band's personal shit. It's literally every person in the world is being affected by this in some way, shape, or form. And somehow I take comfort in that, just knowing that I'm not the only one getting, you know, that their plans didn't work out the way they wanted. So we've been pretty resilient in ways to try to keep the momentum rolling and stay on everybody's radar with the record. There's been a ton of great press, you know, including, you know, yourself right now. So, you know, shout out to everybody who's not only listening to the record and enjoying it in a tough time, but everybody who still wants to talk about it. And, you know, we just keep rolling full steam ahead, because that's all we know how to do. And that's just the kind of guys that we are.
Yeah, really. And I have a lot of listeners that are in Australia and also in the UK and in Europe in general who may not have heard of The Wild. So talk to me just a little bit about what the sound is. You know, I know it's a rock and roll thing and I've heard it and I love it. It's great stuff. But for the fan that's listening to my show, is a fan of my show and doesn't know who Dylan is and doesn't know what The Wild is, what kind of music can they expect, and especially on the third album or on this album?
Yeah, I actually heard it. Somebody said to me, since this record came out, they said it sounded like rock and roll snorting punk. And I was like, wow, I've never heard that. That's actually really cool. It's a great, you know, one-line description of our band. We all grew up playing in punk bands and listening to rock records as kids, you know, and all that sort of, I think really the grit and the authenticity and the attitude of that sort of, you know, upbringing is kind of what pushed us into the rock world, but with a little bit more, I don't know, like we've had success at active rock radio and things like this, but there's something about our band that just, you can't really put us in with, you know, the Shine Downs or the Nickelbacks of the active rock world. We're not like that. We got a little bit more dirt under our fingernails, and, you know, we didn't ever go to the radio. The radio came to us, and we just like to play music with a lot of conviction and feeling behind it and a lot of raw energy, you know. So, you know, it's you know, the early AC/DC side of things mixed with a punk rock thing, and, you know, the authenticity and the feeling of the blues in it, you know, because all that great, really traditional rock music is deep rooted in the blues, as we all know and love. And, you know, we're no different. We really want to write songs and create an energy in a live show that's just based around all of that high octane, you know, authenticity and energy, and just really bringing it as hard and fast and loud as we can.
So talk to me then about radio, because you mentioned radio came to you. How important is it for a band in this day and age to have the radio support? Because we know fans have all these streaming services. We've got YouTube. We've got a lot of choices. Does radio still make a difference? Does it really matter if terrestrial radio picks you up?
That's a great question. I mean, let me put it this way. It doesn't hurt. It's never going to hurt when you have your song on the radio. I can tell you that firsthand. But in a situation like ours, we didn't know. We really didn't. We didn't service anything in the radio in the early days. We're a band with a cool song and a really cool video that went viral. And a lot of people really started to latch onto it and really started to get on board with us. And, you know, started sharing it and just kind of blew up. And before we knew it, and we were touring, like we were always on the road in the early days. I mean, we still are, but in the early days, it was just nonstop. Like we would because we never had a thing around us where we couldn't play, you know, we couldn't overplay anywhere. We were still trying to get our name out. So we would play, we probably played too much, but we didn't give a shit. You know, we just wanted to play all the time and be around. And all of a sudden, people started coming to the shows and saying, "Hey man, I heard you on the radio, 100.3 The Bear in Edmonton. Hey, I heard you on the radio." And, you know, and in Lloydminster, "Hey, I heard you on the radio in Red Deer and in Calgary," and all these things. And we had no idea. But what we started to notice is the sure shit was a lot more people at the shows. So in one way, it is definitely important. But on the flip side of that, on the other hand, like you did say, there's so many streaming services available now that I think not only just a younger audience is into, but people in general. And I've always said, the minute that these streaming platforms start injecting local news based off of an IP address on your phone or something like that onto their streaming services, terrestrial radio may be done as we know it. Don't get me wrong, like, they've been good to my band, and I'm not knocking anything, but if you have an opportunity to pay $10 a month and listen to whatever the hell you want, I mean, I know a lot of people are probably going to go that route over turning on the radio. So the thing that I feel that radio needs to do in order to stay relevant is become a discovery tool the way it used to be. Allow the jocks to find bands, up-and-coming bands that maybe people haven't heard of, and champion those bands and be the ones behind them to tell their story, to say, hey, everybody needs to listen to this band. This is my favorite band, and it should be your favorite band. And without that, I mean, you're just turning on the radio to hear, Sweet Home Alabama again for the 100th time, and, all these songs that have been played to death out there without there being any sort of new life injected into it.
Now, the thing I retain from that answer is that you said there's radio in Red Deer. Who knew? Who knew? I thought that was just forest land. Nobody expected to have radio in Red Deer. But I am going to, of course, ask you about Mike Fraser. Here's a guy who has touched albums from Guns N' Roses, Hatebreed. I'm trying to think what else he's done. Bryan Adams, Chickenfoot, Buck Cherry, AC/DC, of course. What does a Mike Fraser bring to you? Because here you are, you're a new band with a new vision. It's the 20s or whatever you call it, the 2000s. Are you somewhat worried that he's going to have this old vision of what makes rock, or does he bring an experience to it where you go, I never would have thought about that? Just talk to me about that relationship and working with Mike.
You know what? I think the biggest thing between Mike and I is it's always been a developing thing. First of all, he's one of my best friends. We talk multiple times every single week, and having that relationship outside of working together allows for the working relationship to be so strong. A lot of it's based around communication in the studio. So we're able to really talk to each other and understand what you're trying to achieve. That's where you can really, start to flourish. And it's no different for, record to record, because when we first got together, I didn't, when I very, very first met him, I didn't know him. You know what I mean? And I'll admit I was taken aback by that. And I was like, this is Mike Fraser. Holy shit. Like, how am I going to make it happen? How am I going to work with this guy? How am I going to make it happen? Funny story. I actually offered him my car to make the first record. I had a 1965 Cadillac DeVille, and it's the only thing I had. And he laughed at me and slid me back the keys. And I said, why are you laughing? He goes, well, the last guy to give me his car was John Bon Jovi, and I still got it. So no, I'm not taking your car. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But the thing about Fraser is he's very good at understanding the artists that he works with. He's very good at understanding what they want. And again, that goes back to the communication thing. So if you listen to our records from record to record to record, by the time we've arrived at this third record, there's been, enough of a relationship developed and enough understanding of who the artist is and what they were trying to achieve. And then you both grow, record to record. The band evolves in the songwriting, in the style or whatever, in these things. And the producer and the engineer, in Mike's case, they really can evolve with that. And I think for us on this third record, especially, it's one of those scenarios where we both really did what we set out to do and got a real understanding of what we wanted to do on this record specifically. So Mike's biggest thing is just really being able to dial in the sound that bands are after. He's an absolute genius and a wizard with it. Be it guitar tones, drum tones, everything really. Just he understands where he wants things to go based off of what the artist wants, and that's a really, really great quality to have when you're working with someone making a record.
Well, it really is. So okay, so talk to me about that. We know the story about the car. It's been well at least in Canada we've heard about it. But what is it about your band that attracted him? Because like we said, he's worked with AC/DC and Aerosmith and Guns N' Roses, the biggest of the big. There's got to be 100 local bands that might say, hey, Mike, I've got a song. Hey, what is it about you guys where he went, yeah, okay, all right, I'm good. Like, what vibe did you give off?
You know what? I don't know. You'd have to ask him that if you really wanted the truth about it. But
I can do that as soon as you set up an interview. I can do that. I can do that.
No, truthfully, man, he came to us, and I'll admit he set up the meeting to our former management back. This is going back 5-6 years ago. And he just said, he was like, I know what to do at this band. And that was the message that was relayed to me. And at the time I just thought to myself, don't get me wrong. I want to work with this guy. I know that I want to make a record with him. I know that he gets it. He gets our band. Of course he does. But my biggest thing was how am I going to do this? And, Mike's just the kind of guy, if he really believes in something, if he gets, a strong feeling about it. He's a very passionate guy when it comes to his craft about this kind of music that we all know and love, that we all need to, preserve and uphold. And if he really believes in something, he will make it work for you. He's that kind of a guy. So we must have done something right in those early years to get his attention. And truthfully, I think it comes down to the fact that, especially with rock music, there isn't a lot of bands like us. There's a lot of rock bands, and I'm not saying they're not good, but there isn't a lot of rock bands that have the true, energy and the live set and grit behind them, or they play it a little safe, or their records are a little too overproduced. And to me, that's okay, but it's just never what we were going to be. And I think that's
Right.
something that really registered with him, and that's what brought him on board.
So what you're saying is that they're not good. That's basically.
No, I'm not saying they're not good. No,
I'm just kidding.
They're just
But-
not my cup of tea.
No, I know, but I do want to. Okay, so listen, this whole rock is dead thing. We're not going to discuss that because that's ridiculous. And you have a quote where you once said, "Hey, if rock is dead, why are all our shows sold out?" or something like that, which is true. But what do you bring to the genre? Because we have done, the Aerosmith thing, and we've done the Guns N' Roses thing, and then Nine Inch Nails moves it a bit forward, and Marilyn Manson moves it. What do you bring to the game? What is sort of your vision of what rock should be in 2020?
I think for us, it's a lot about perseverance. It's about, perseverance of getting through flavors of the week and, passing trends. We've never really concerned ourselves with that. We never have tried to adapt to any sort of sound or fashion or any of that shit. We've just kind of always been who we are, and it's worked. And that's something that we've built a foundation on and haven't really, went astray from. So, there's a thing with this kind of music, for me anyway, that it's very much about preserving this traditional sound and this sort of authenticity about it all. Because a lot of the cookie cutter stuff to me sounds more like pop. And I'm not, again, if that's what people like, it's music, it's subjective. You can like it, you can not like it. But for me, I like when I can tell there's a band that is actually playing real instruments, and it's got some imperfections on it, and it's got some character to it. And that's one thing that I feel is missing in the genre nowadays. And that's one thing that we are trying to bring back, because that's just the kind of guys that we are, and that's the kind of music we play.
Yeah, and you're right about that. My buddy Alan Niven, who used to manage Guns N' Roses and who knows Mike quite well, he always says there is a perfection in the imperfection. And that's true.
Yeah, he's right.
It's true when it comes to rock. So talk to me then about some of the challenges you had doing this kind of music, because you're right. It would have been much easier to, do some kind of EDM thing or some kind of, straight pop thing. Or what kind of challenges have you faced through the career with bars going, you're playing original, or record labels going, it's rock, dudes. Has it been a challenge, or has the music just been that great that people went, oh yeah, I don't fucking care, this guy's good?
Well, it's either that we were never privy to all the people saying no, or we just didn't give a fuck. Basically, we were keeping in mind we've been at it for a number of years. So I think especially in the early years, we weren't really concerned about much of anything. As long as there was a show, and we could go we could get from show to show, and we could play our songs and feel that freedom that the music it was giving us and the rush of the show was giving us. And then we could, do whatever we did after the show and get in all sorts of fucking trouble. That was enough for us, and that was enough for us to keep chasing it. And also, I couldn't really imagine doing anything else, and I know the guys are the same. So, whether or not there was, I think, one of the biggest things that, I'll talk about this. One of the biggest things that happened in the early days was the big rush of EDM and dubstep and all these sorts of subgenres to electronic music. And again, I'll say it, music is subjective, I understand. But it put up a bit of a wall against rock bands, and there is still a bit of that going on. And that's just, for us, I guess it's been part of the thing that's pushed us forward. If you want to tell us no, or people want to say it's not really what I listen to. And for us, it's more of a reason to want to just keep doing it and just keep pushing and you never really stop, because all of that, blowback or like, oh, I don't know if that's for me, that's just fuel to us. We just want to keep writing music that we know we love and our fans love, and hope to just keep doing it on a bigger scale.
Yeah, and that's what I like about this band, is that it's authentic. Because if you were just in it to make a buck, it would have been easy to do a dubstep or to do one of those things and be, hey, we're playing Osheaga Festival in Montreal, 100,000 people, look at us, we're great. But you've stuck to your guns. You're doing the music you love to do. So where does this love come from? Is it, you had a big brother or mom and dad, or how did you sort of get into this genre and not some other one? Why didn't you follow whatever Ed Sheeran down the road? What motivated you? Did you pick up like an Aerosmith album and go, "Fuck yeah, this is what I like"?
You know what? It was I was really really young, and my parents would like bring me to my grandparents, for watch the kids for a while, kind of thing. And my grandparents were absolutely crazy about Elvis, and they had Elvis all over their house, and they'd go to Vegas and they'd see Elvis, and these sorts of things. And I remember seeing Elvis on TV, and he would perform, and he would do something, and the chicks would scream, and the people would scream, and I just, even at a young age, I was like, what's that about? What is going on there? And so I wanted to align myself with whatever the hell was going on there. And then it wasn't long after that before I was gifted a ukulele instead of a guitar, because I was actually so small. I think I was around 5 or 6 years old or something. And I took that thing everywhere. And my dad is also a musician, and just he's a real deal rock and roller, and he had really great taste in music growing up. So we lived in the middle of fucking nowhere, like an hour from the town that I went to school in, or would have to do anything, go to get groceries, any of that. So every drive into town that we would do would be a great rock record. Like, so I was raised on, early AC/DC, Bad Company, Foghat, Steppenwolf, all the Aerosmith, all the greats, man, and all the classic stuff that is really, again, it's music you can tell that it is a human being playing an instrument. And those drives from that upbringing, from watching all this as a young kid, and all that time spent in my dad's truck listening to classic rock records, really is what just laid the blueprint for it all down for me. Because that's just, I can recall, even every real rock fan's probably had that moment in their life where they just knew right away, this is for me, and it's going to be for me for the rest of my life.
Well, and I noticed you mentioned that your dad played all the greats, and you forgot to mention Kiss. So obviously that's an oversight, I would imagine.
Yeah. You know what? He'll tell you he's still to this day a proud member of the Kiss Army. So
there you go.
That wasn't oversight on my behalf. Yeah, he knows. He knows.
Well, we know. But okay, so your dad grows up on all this music, and he plays it for you in the car as you drive everywhere. And now you come to him with these 3 albums. How does your dad react to this? Does he say, "Hey, son, come on, this ain't no fucking Bob Seger, pick up the game"? Or does he say, "Hey, you know what? It's pretty fucking rocking. Good job, son"? No,
it's pretty cool, man. Like, they're both him and my mom are incredibly supportive of it, and because they still like rock music. You know what I mean? Like, you go over their house and they're still playing great rock records when they're
like
making
Kiss.
dinner, when they're hanging
like Kiss
out.
Alive.
Yeah, exactly. But they are the kind of people, though, that they'll just throw on a record, like a full album, and listen to it. And that's a sign of their age, of course, in the times. But that's what's missing in the genre. Fuck the singles and fuck the streaming and all this shit. Like, this goes for the bands too. Start making records that have enough good songs that somebody can throw on and listen to every goddamn song. That's a true art to that, and that's missing.
Oh, there is. Okay, so let me just quickly ask you about that though, and then we'll end on this. When you make a record, do you look at it as we need to have 3 great Spotify singles, or do you say no? We need to make 10, 12 songs and make an album that has a sequence and a flow and a start and a finish. How do you sort of approach it?
Yeah, that is an incredibly strong thing that I focus on. I want it's just like a live show for me. I want the thing to have some flow to it. I want each song to, complement the next, and so on and so forth, with the proper flow to it all. Of course you write the songs first. It's not like we wrote a concept album or anything here with the intention of it being, this big mystical thing or anything like that. We wrote the best rock songs that we possibly could. And we did it, and we did it with the idea of giving each song something really important to say, and finding a way to say it that was infectious to the listener. And once that was done, we wanted to align the songs in a proper running order, that each song complemented the next one and give the whole album an experience. And it wasn't about one song or 3 songs. It was about all 10, and making sure all 10 really had impact. And I think that's something that a lot of bands should start going back to and focusing on when they write a record. No more filler. Just put enough songs on there that put enough attention into all the songs, because people are missing that.
So we've gone from all killer, no filler to some filler, little bit of killer. We've gone backwards in, you need one killer track and the rest can be filler. Anyway, on that, merci beaucoup. Hopefully we will get to see you and every other band back on the road soon, because this is nuts, man. We need rock and roll, and as much as I love watching really horrible videos on YouTube or on Facebook, I need the real thing in my face, and I need real bands.
Hey, you know what? Hey, yeah, we do. You know what? We're really missing it too. But on that note, let me just tell you something real quick. We recently did just do a Facebook Live show, and we did it on a proper stage with full light set up and full soundboard recording, loud guitars. There was no chump sitting around with iPhones. So if you do want to see our band in a live setting and you want to see a real actual live show streamed, go to our Facebook page and check it out. And like you said, once this whole thing blows over, it'll be great for all of us, because we can all get back to doing what we know how to do and love. And for us, that's playing rock and roll, and hopefully everybody's coming to the shows when the thing's all done.
Yeah, and I think it's important for fans to get back out there, because all music, whether it's rock or EDM or country or pop, they really survive on the live shows and selling those tickets and selling the merch at those shows. And without that, we're going to lose a lot of great music and a lot of great bands, because not everybody's going to be able to ride the wave. So support your bands, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. He's right. Without that support, this whole thing doesn't exist. So you keep supporting the bands that you love, and this music will never die.
Yep, and it's every genre of music. And on that, merci beaucoup. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Didier, and have a good day, man. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Absolutely.
This has been Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. For more exclusive content and interviews, subscribe on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, and many more. Follow Mitch on all the socials, especially Twitter, @Mitch Lafon, and on Instagram, @Mitch_Lafon. Get your Mitch merch now at loudtracks.com/Mitch.